Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, landlord advertises all of our company's equipment for sale to our competitors. Best follow our eviction to the letter. You want me to read the lease? If you say so. I'm sorry, I've been instructed not to help you with that. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Landlord advertises all of our company's equipment for sale to our competitors. Best follow our eviction to the letter. I work for a leisure company, think soft play, indoor soccer, laser tag, can't be specific. Prior to lockdown, managers and the big bosses were negotiating the renewal of the lease on one of our parks. Things were going mostly smoothly, however, the landlords were difficult to contact. Then 2020's sh*t hit the fan. All of our sites were closed, and everything was thrown into a mess. Negotiations began to slip down the priority list. Nobody thought the landlord would push an eviction for an expired lease during this period. Especially with it still getting rent, despite the site's closure, and the closure of every business and restaurant in the immediate area. We were wrong. A few days ago we received a letter saying we had 7 days to leave the premises and take everything with us. We are reminded that anything left in the building after 7 days will become the landlord's property. That line is very important. Now a lot of construction goes into installing our equipment into a new building, which makes emptying one even harder. Add a lockdown, with no staff and most businesses shut, it meant that saving much of our assets would prove to be extremely difficult. To lose a profitable site and all of its assets is definitely a blow to our company. But here is where it gets worse. A few days into our 7-day eviction, we find out that the landlord has been advertising our park to our competitors. But he isn't offering just the building, he is offering all of our stuff pre-installed. Ready to go, just needs rebranding. The landlord has evicted us from the property in an attempt to increase rent and make a solid profit from our equipment installed because he thinks we won't be able to empty the park. We were furious. And here is where the malicious compliance came in. We were told we had 7 days to move everything we owned out of the property. So that's what we did. Local businesses from all around offered up free space to store our things. A few people came back out of lockdown and they all spent the rest of the week removing, selling or destroying everything that was related to us. We didn't even leave light fittings. In every other site vacation we have seen, we always end up leaving thousands of dollar worth of disco lights in the ceilings because they're too hard to get. We leave most the construction in, as well as things like the bars and kitchens that all stay intact, recognizable as what they once were, but not this building. We ripped up the flooring we installed, tore down the walls that were not part of the original structure, wooden walls to divide up the space, ripped apart our manager's offices and removed all artwork and lockers. The landlord now has every new deal he has been making dead in the water, a large renovation bill to install new flooring etc., or a company willing to do it themselves like we were. Lockdown has been extended another 4 weeks, so he has at least another 4 weeks without rent, we were paying, and won't have any potential buyers. Silver lining, the assets we got out of the site, fridges, TVs, equipment, food, tables, have all been sold, and the lack of rent and additional income has helped the business and paid staff wages. Update. Hi everyone. I'm so sorry for how long an update has taken, I was waiting for things to unfold. Here is what happened next. We handed in the keys and it was probably the quickest handover we've ever had. The landlord clearly didn't want to make any kind of conversation and there was definitely an elephant in the room, but he definitely said nothing about the lack of our equipment. Complications did arise when we went to get back various deposits, but he had no case to withhold the deposits from us as the building was in excellent shape. We had conducted much of the maintenance work ourselves, so the building was in a significantly better condition than we found it. We also cleaned up 99% of the rubbish and dirt from our demolition crusade, so he couldn't bill us for cleaning. A very minor bit of pressing from our legal team meant that we received everything owed back in full. The building is still vacant, and as of yet we don't know of any potential buyers. At this moment in time our company is still standing despite the pandemic closures and lack of business. Staff are all still employed and doing well. A huge thanks again for everyone who took the time to read this, and to those who were dedicated enough to remind me for updates. Laughing face. Big shout out as well to the amazing people who gave awards. I really appreciate it, and I've been making sure to pass on the good karma. Smiley face. You want me to read the lease? If you say so. Long time lurker, first time poster. I just had the best malicious compliance today and thought I would share. Backstory. I moved to the Big Apple in April from LA and signed a lease for an apartment sight unseen. It was the same price as my LA apartment, but while in LA $1,350 gets you a master bedroom with a walk-in closet, private bath and 3 roommates. In NYC for $1,350 they've turned my closet into the bathroom, and I now weigh 135.0 pounds thanks to the 7 flight of stairs that I had to walk up every day. Some days I would raise my arms to put on deodorant and scrape my elbow on the ceiling. One of my 5 roommates was an RN though, so there was the upside. The only saving grace was that this apartment was pet friendly and had a in-unit washer and dryer. I hated living there, and after 2 months when my job said I could work remotely, I packed up and went to the Caribbean. While I was there I won the NYC housing lottery. For the first time in my life I could afford to live by myself in NYC of all places. I'd read in forums that landlords are usually pretty happy for tenants when they win and let you out of your lease no problem. Present. So in my optimism I sent the management company an email letting them know that I won the lottery and wanted to discuss terminating my lease early. They told me to speak to the brokerage to get my room filled. The brokerage told me that I would need to pay a broker's fee of $1,350 and still pay rent until they filled the unit, or I could try and fill it myself. I find a guy who was already applying with the broker for another unit and he wants my room. Then management says they want the guy I found to pay $1,400. This is genuinely the worst apartment that I've lived in. I don't feel right trying to get someone to pay $1,400 for this room. I'm in a bit of a time crunch as new guy wants to move in August 1st, so I need to hire movers to take my stuff to storage the next day, but if I don't get the approval from management that everything is good to go on their end, then there's no point. So I need management to agree to let this guy take over my lease for the price that is on my lease. I argue that a new price would be a new lease, and if they want to do that they would have to release me from the lease and market the apartment at this new price point. They refuse, saying that I should pay the broker's fee or forfeit my deposit and continue to pay rent until they get my room rented. I'm upset because management basically wants to make more money and assume no risk. I would end up paying until they rent out the awful room to someone. I tell them this is unfair and makes no sense. Then management tells me, well, there's no lease takeover in the lease. I'm confused because I vaguely remember reading something about a $500 fee for a lease takeover. Read your lease. We were doing you a favor before, but now we're only going by the lease. Management tells me. So I find my lease because I remember there being this $500 clause. I never found the $500 clause because written on the first page of the lease was clause 2. Length of lease, the term, that means length, of this lease is beginning on February 1, 2022 and ending on August 31, 2022. I'm elated. My move-in date for my new place is August 25, 2022, so I no longer need to rush. All because management told me to read my lease. I give them back a call and request the email address to send my 30-day notice of intent to vacate, or if it should be mailed, as it's not specified in the lease. Management tells me that I can't break the lease. I tell them I'm not, it ends next month. I send them a photo of the first page of the lease. He sputters and says, "You know it's a year-long lease. This is a typo. As you know, I just took over managing the building and I inherited some bad leases." I didn't know this, but I gleefully respond, "Well, I was doing you a favor before, but now I can only go by the lease. If the lease says my term ends next month, I have to honor that." He hangs up, furious that this is happening. At this point I am no longer concerned about hiring movers, so when he calls me back at 8 p.m. I am ready to tell him the cut-off for the movers was 4 p.m. and that I will move out according to lease, but he starts the conversation in a somber, defeated voice. "You can move out on the 31st. We just have to go according to the lease. We will do a final walk-through and give you back your deposit." As I am still in the Caribbean, my cousin will be subletting for August and I will be moving into my new apartment when I get back. Everything worked out in the end, all because I read my lease. I'm sorry, I've been instructed not to help you with that. I work in a public sector job that's a union shop, with a pretty active union. The opportunity to comply with poorly worded directions comes along fairly often if you're a shit-stirrer shop steward, and while sometimes it's worth a grievance, sometimes it's just way more fun to do precisely as I'm told, and they never seem to get that that's what comes next after I utter my favorite phrase in the world: "Hey, would you mind sending me an email summarizing this so I have it to refer back to?" We've used, up until really recently, a mainframe emulation program that's the flower of 1970s technology, for the bulk of the work we do. I'm a bit of a geek for this stuff, and one thing I figured out how to do a number of years ago was write macros to automate actions. Everything from notices to be mailed out, to flipping through data screens looking for information, and even some data entry, could all be automated. I was smart enough to not brag about this too much, so I didn't get voluntold to help support people with it, but I did tinker with it for years and had a pre-built tool set that I shared with anyone who asked. A friend I helped that way moved into management, and she contacted me asking for help with her staff, because she knew how useful it was but not his to do it herself. On a separate note, and also because I'm kind of a geek, I was representing a worker at that time who had been in a particular manager's crosshairs, to the point that they'd had IT put a completely unsubtle keylogger on her computer. I was helping her with something else, and was looking over her shoulder at her screen, when I saw one of the alerts it tossed up. I asked her about it, and she said it was weird, but she didn't know what it was, so I dug through her computer a bit, and I showed her what was going on. The reaction from this manager was volcanic. She summoned me to her desk and admonished me about doing stuff that wasn't my job, and gave me very specific instructions that I was not, under any circumstances, to assist people with their computers, or anything else that wasn't spelled out in my position description. Sounds good. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. Could I get you to shoot me that in an email so I can follow up with any clarification? Certainly, she beamed at me. This was going so well. About 2 weeks later, my manager friend, who had had to pull some strings to get me released for a day to come out to her branch, in another county, it was about 45 miles away, came by, since I was gonna ride out with her. I showed her the letter from Miss Thou Shalt Not, who, incidentally, wasn't my supervisor, and who I knew full well hadn't told my boss about it, or their boss. Sorry. I was instructed not to help with this. Not much I can do, see. She read through it, and looked back up at me with a small but evil smile. "You saved this just for me, didn't you?" "Of course I did. Merry Christmas in August, I guess." She had had no end of trouble with Miss Thou Shalt Not in the past, and the opportunity to rain some hellfire was just too good. She took the copy of the email with her, and they had a private meeting in one of the conference rooms, and were joined about 5 minutes in by their mutual supervisor, who I was also on good terms with. She never did tell me what was said behind closed doors, but before the end of the day I had an email retracting the previous instructions, and the manager responsible never referenced it again. The best part is, too, the employee I'd been helping told me a day or two later that she'd stopped getting those weird alerts all of a sudden, and asked if I knew anything about that. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.